The moment.
It's
The moment we've all been waiting for,
it's the
ladies
moment
and
I've
gentlemen.
been waiting for. How long have we been here, Bradley?
We have been here since at least 20 after.
I thought it was like
7.
7:12.
It might have been
I
7:12.
thought it was 7:12 that we've been here. We've just been looking so forward to tonight.
We have not been able to.
We haven't been
Wait.
able to sleep. We haven't been able to eat.
I actually took a nap in the youth room today.
You did?
Yes.
Wow, you just
I'm going to
admitted
start. I'm going to
that.
start a watch party.
Are you going to start a watch party?
Rookie mistake.
Rookie
I've got the volume
mistake.
on.
I will also start a watch party. Oh, no, it's not letting me start a watch party.
Really?
Oh, yep, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Watch party started. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Talking about the Exodus. So, Brad, how are you doing today, man?
I have been doing very well. It has been a fun night. We normally go out to dinner before this.
Yep.
And then we just been sitting kind of shooting the breeze.
What does that?
Do you even know
what's
that,
even
what that
mean?
means?
What's that even mean? What does it mean
That
to
means we've
shoot
been
the
talking.
breeze?
We've
Is
been-
that when you shoot in the air and you automatically hit it
No.
because it's breezy? You know who's also breezy?
Are you just making stuff up as you go now?
Well, okay. So see, this is what happens, Brad.
What?
Okay. Every once in a while, I start a sentence, and I hope I get there by the end of it.
Because you haven't processed what you're going to say through it.
No, it's just because it's more funny to say stupid stuff.
It's more funny.
More funny.
That's very good.
Funnier. Welcome, everyone.
Is anybody? Oh, look, there's some people watching. Maybe.
Yeah, Kevin Saylor joined us.
That's
He's our number
awesome.
one fan.
Yes.
Sierra, good
Yes.
to see you. Meredith,
Thank you, Kevin.
good to see you all. We're so glad you're here.
Yes.
So
We said we were going to start early tonight.
we are. So if you want to start with a brain teaser.
Really? We're going to start already? I mean, that quickly?
Well, you brought it up
Let's
like
go.
you wanted to transition.
Well, here's the deal.
We are starting off strong.
We are. Yeah, we can start with the brain teaser.
Let's start with the brain teaser.
And just for fun, you guys probably don't know this, but what Jordan does is he gives a script of what we're going to do tonight.
Yes.
And so as I'm reading by this, I ask him a brain teaser that says, Brad asked Jordan a brain teaser.
Yep.
The next line is Jordan, with divine beauty, answers correctly.
Divine beauty. I'm going to answer correctly.
If you answer, what exactly does divine beauty?
If I answer it correctly, you'll find out.
Okay, very good.
All right.
So I am gone next week. I'm on vacation.
Yeah, spoiler alert. You
And
get Bruce.
You get Bruce. And so I decided that I was going to ask you a Thanksgiving question because the week after that is Thanksgiving and we are not going to be live.
Yep, we will not be live for Thanksgiving. We'll be
Exactly.
eating turkey.
Exactly. So you will be eating turkey.
We will be eating turkey.
So this is kind of a two-part question. The first one is, this is not the brain teaser.
is this
but
going
I
to be
wanna
like
just-
how many hundreds of pounds of turkey?
Just hang
It's
on.
like that stupid pumpkin question.
No. Well, it is kind of like a pumpkin question. Okay. So what does the average turkey weigh? This is not the brain teaser. This is just a
Okay.
warm-up to the brain
The
teaser.
average turkey.
This should help you get the brain teaser.
Okay.
Okay. The average turkey eaten at a family meal, how much does that turkey weigh?
7 pounds.
Not even close.
9 pounds.
No, you're getting closer.
25.
No, 15.
15.
The average turkey that people.
How many pounds do you think you eat a turkey?
It's
Oh,
not-
is that the next question?
No, that's the whole turkey.
Oh.
How much the whole turkey weighs? You got to start listening to these questions. This is why you are never going to answer with divine
I am
beauty.
over 25, ladies and gentlemen.
If you would listen to the question, maybe. Okay, so
All right, what's the question?
the average turkey that people buy is on the table for the whole family to eat is 15 pounds.
Okay, and he wonders why I didn't understand the question. He's wording it like this.
Oh my gosh.
Are you going to ask the question already?
Yes.
All
What
right,
is the largest, according to Guinness Book of
Guinness?
Records? Guinness.
You say Guinness?
Yeah, Guinness.
It's the Guinness Book of World
Guinness
Record. Yeah.
Book of World Records. What is the largest turkey on record?
Okay, so you said the average turkey was 15 pounds.
Exactly. The largest turkey on record. I think you have a shot at this.
You think you do? I do.
1 in a million. But
42 pounds.
no.
Was that close?
No.
Too low or too high?
You're too low.
Seriously?
Yes.
65.
You're still too low.
Bruce, did you raise this turkey?
Yeah.
81?
You're close. 86 pounds.
Oh!
The Guinness
Oh,
Guinness
no.
World Book of Record turkey is 86 pounds.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a big frippin' turkey.
Grandma Gillespie, I'm going to need Grandpa to find us an 81-pound turkey.
Can you imagine cooking that beast?
How many pounds of that turkey you think you could eat?
I love turkey.
How many pounds do you think you put down?
I don't have any idea.
5 pounds?
No.
I bet you could put down 5.
You think?
I'm talking like from breakfast to dinner. If you wore your
Well, at
sweatpants,
at one setting?
if you wore your sweatpants.
Well, I always wear sweatpants. You think
Oh,
that's
man.
why I always wear
Hey,
sweatpants?
Sierra's guess was 84.
Who was?
Cedar Creek's.
Really?
Her guess was 84.
Very good.
Yeah, well
She
done.
Googled it.
Did she? What was the answer?
I don't. 86 pounds.
86
It's time for
pounds.
us to go.
Oh,
Hey,
it is
everybody.
so
Welcome
ready
to
for us.
C3 Thursday Live. My name is Brad Maddox, and I am the outreach pastor here at Crossbridge Community Church. We've got new swivel chairs, so I'm sorry if that annoys you. And this is my good friend Jordan Chitwood, who is the young adults pastor here at Crossbridge Community Church.
Yes, I am. That's what I do, and
Yeah.
that's what I love. So,
Yeah.
hey, welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you're here. We are going to spend 2 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving talking about kid stories. And why are you laughing? They're not going to be really that kiddie.
No, they're
and
not gonna be kid
kid-friendly. And
stories.
here's why we call it kid stories, okay? A lot of these stories that we find in the Old Testament, mostly found in Genesis, Exodus, 1 Samuel, kind of those are the 3 stories, or the 3 books that have a lot of these kid stories.
Right.
The reason we call them kid stories is because you usually have grown up hearing the child version of these
Right.
stories. And when you grow up to be adults, you start realizing that the Bible isn't really that kid-friendly.
That's for sure.
There's quite a bit of violence. There's quite a bit of war, which is also violence. There's a lot of inappropriate stuff. Like it's pretty dark even,
It is.
and you can struggle with that. So we are going to look at 2 kid stories for the next 2 weeks that will set us up for the Christmas story and our Christmas series that we're going to do in a couple weeks.
Right.
And so tonight what we're going to look at is we're going to walk through the story of Exodus. This probably wasn't really a huge kid story unless you watched, what was that Moses movie? What was it called?
The 10 Commandments.
No, the Prince of Egypt. The Disney movie Prince of Egypt, Pixar. You've never seen. Okay, if you are watching with us, comment below if you've seen.
We are
the-
off to a great start tonight, folks.
Daryl, it's good to see you, man. Daryl, will you save me, man, and let us know that you've let your kids watch The Prince of Egypt?
The
okay.
Prince of Egypt? I
The
didn't even know that was
Prince
a
of Egypt.
Disney movie.
It came out in like 1997.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's been out for years. And then have you heard of?
I've heard of Aladdin.
That's. I mean, I guess Aladdin kind of has the same concept. Oh, Sierra told me it's DreamWorks. Okay, so it's a DreamWorks movie called The Prince of Egypt.
Okay.
Okay, anyway.
Anyway.
So that's the kid story version of it. Even in that film, there is a part of it where you've got the final plague. Basically, just to give a brief overview, the Israelites were put into slavery by the Egyptians.
Right.
And then the Egyptians started making them work 7 days a week. And they started crying out to God, God, help us. And so God comes in and he sends Moses and Aaron to basically be his microphone to talk to Pharaoh,
Yep.
which is the god or the king of Egypt, okay? What we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to skip the first, there's 10 total plagues.
Right.
We're going to skip the first 9 plagues.
And some of those plagues were Can you imagine frogs
Oh,
everywhere?
Yeah, there were frogs in the
your bed.
plague. There was
You know,
blood
I
in
like
the water.
frogs, yes.
There was, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you love frogs.
No, I hate frogs.
There were locusts, there were gnats, there were a lot
Everything.
of stuff. Yeah, everything. Darkness over the land. And we're going to talk about something that does not get a lot of spotlight in the church.
Right.
And that's the final plague.
And it's actually plays a theme throughout history of not only the Israelites but Jesus.
Absolutely.
And it's honestly very powerful.
Yeah, the entire story of Exodus. We did Exodus for our young adult ministry the fall semester last year. We walked through the book of Exodus.
Right.
And it's powerful, but there are a lot of questions. We're like, okay, wow, did God really do that? Did the Israelites really do that?
Right.
Did the Egyptians really do that? And so it can be heartbreaking, but we want to talk about it because we don't shy away from tough topics
Right.
here
So-
at C3 Live. And
so
so
we're
let's
gonna
dive right in.
Yeah, we're going to start in Exodus chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. And here's what it says. Now the Lord had said to Moses, I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that, he will let you go from here. And when he does, he will drive you out completely. I love this part. Tell the people that men and women alike are to ask their neighbors for articles of silver and gold. The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and Moses himself was highly regarded in Egypt by Pharaoh's officials and by the people.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff in that passage.
It really is. And you can skip over some of this if you're not careful. And one is that Moses was actually regarded as favorable to,
Yes.
to people, which was huge.
Yep.
And then God actually had them loot Egypt on the way out.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
It is fascinating.
And it's how they basically survived, in
for the next 40 years.
Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a few things that we want to note from what's going on in this passage. Again, the Egyptians had the Israelites enslaved for years. And a part of that then, so God sends Moses and Aaron to talk to Pharaoh, basically pleading to Pharaoh, saying, Pharaoh, our God doesn't want to have to do any of this.
Right.
Please soften your heart and let our people go. Pharaoh continues to say no. And some verses, if you read throughout Exodus, half the verses say that Pharaoh hardened his heart, and then half the verses say that God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah, and this is not in the script, but when you talk about that, and that's something I think that people get confused about, is when it says God hardened his heart. How do you take that?
Yeah, so one thing that we have to understand, especially with the early books of the Old Testament, is that these were written with the understanding that God was in control of everything.
Right.
And so the writer, believed to be Moses, would have associated every good thing with his God and also every bad thing with his God.
Okay.
And so if something were going on like this, he sees Pharaoh hardening his heart, he would associate that
That God is
with
creating.
God is creating him
Right.
to do that. And so that's why the author goes, I think, back and forth, is because he sees these conversations with his God,
Right.
and then he sees Pharaoh hardening his heart. So it must be God that's doing it.
But the big idea here is that Pharaoh actually, he's warned about these things.
Absolutely.
And could have chosen
Yes.
his own free will of saying, you know what, no, I'm going to listen to God,
Yes.
and I'm going to let them go.
Yeah, and a big reason why Pharaoh refuses to listen to the Hebrew God, our God, is because he viewed himself as a god.
Yes, and so did his people.
And so did the Egyptians. And so the Egyptians had as many equal chances as the Israelites did to convert to Judaism.
You know, as we were unpacking this earlier today, it's one of the things that I found interesting, because I had not really thought a lot about that, is this news would have spread throughout the kingdom.
Absolutely.
And they would have known, hey, the first plague, this is what God did.
Yes.
And they had the opportunity to say, if that's what God did,
Yep.
maybe that God is the one we ought to be following.
Yeah, but then what they did is they saw Pharaoh then have magicians
Yes.
do a few of their magic tricks.
Yes.
And they fell into the lie.
Yeah. But it was time after time.
Time
As you
after
said,
time
10
again.
plagues total.
Yes. So we get to the 10th plague, and the 10th plague, God tells Moses and Aaron in this passage, he says, hey, let Pharaoh know this is his last chance.
Yeah.
And
even gives him a final warning of
yeah,
that.
gives him a final warning.
Guys, this is it.
Exactly. And like you mentioned, Moses was incredibly favored in this land. And so it shows you how much they thought of Pharaoh as a god to ignore someone that they respected, their plea. Like Meryl was saying, hey, we're warning you
Right.
that this is what's going to happen, and God is going to come in and take the firstborn son.
Right.
And so let's move on to the final plague of Exodus, and that comes in Exodus 12, 1 through 7, and this is what Moses writes. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, this month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into the account of people who are there. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you may take them from the sheep or the goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the house where they eat the lambs. And then we're going to move to Exodus 12, 12 through 13. Moses writes this, on that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. Well, doesn't that sound
That is
enjoyable?
a kid-friendly story.
That is a kid-friendly story. And there's a couple things. Our translation, we were reading from the New International Version, and this can make Brad happy. Almost every other translation, including the New Living Translation, says that God is going to come and take the firstborn son.
Right.
And so this just says the firstborn, but it is the firstborn son and the first male of
Right.
animals.
Right.
And why that was significant is because your firstborn son, really your firstborn, but then your firstborn son was your prized possession.
Right.
If you had a son,
It was everything.
It
in
was
that,
everything.
Everything in that culture.
yeah, it was your name, your
It was
legacy
your name.
was
It
going
was
to
your
carry
legacy. It was who you're going to give your estates to. It was
Yeah.
who you're going to give your money to. The most important person, if you will, born in your family.
on. Yeah, males would actually divorce, and this was terrible. They would divorce their wife based on whether or not they could have children, but then also based on whether or not they could have males.
Right.
Or what they would do is they would have multiple wives to be able to produce multiple males.
Correct.
And so what God says is, hey, I have warned the Egyptians, I have warned Pharaoh, I have warned the Israelites. I am going to come in with this final plague, and anybody who puts the blood of their first lamb, their best lamb, their sacrifice, like their prized possession.
Their lamb with defect.
Yes.
And you know, we are such a disadvantage to this because we know the end of the story.
Yes.
You know, we know what this is actually symbolizing things.
Yes.
But you got to put yourself into these people's place. Is that they don't understand. They don't know what's next.
They have no
They
idea.
don't know what's being set up.
Yeah.
They don't understand. You know, this is going to be a huge thing for them to look back at and celebrate.
Yeah.
Because they're being delivered.
Yep.
But they have no idea the implications of what they are about to do.
Yeah, and again, the Egyptians viewed Pharaoh as a god. So they believed that Pharaoh was going to be able to protect them
Right.
and in control. And so many Egyptians refused to put blood on their doorposts.
So, this just came to me. Do you believe that they all knew that this was going to happen?
This specific
Yeah,
sign,
that their firstborn was going to die.
so they would have had 4 days before this plague happened. Because what happens is God says that on the 10th day you find your lamb, and then on the 14th day sacrifice it and put it on.
Right.
So if word of mouth had not spread in 4 days for whatever reason, you still have to understand, I think, especially with this, is that they were so in tuned to follow what Pharaoh said
Right.
that it was honestly actually Pharaoh's obligation to tell his people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so if he didn't get the word out to his people,
Right.
maybe not all of them did, but after 4 days, I think
Right.
that's quite a bit of time to
Yeah.
be able to spread the news.
Yeah.
And so what you have is a situation where it looks like God is evil. It looks like God is wrathful. And you're like, God, how could you do something so evil
Right.
as to take the firstborn? Like, couldn't something else have done that? But what if you just, I don't know.
Well, the other thing is, and I think when you're reading the Old Testament, you see a lot of that, and there's a lot of people that honestly have issues with God or say, you know, I can't follow a God that is that wrathful.
Exactly, yeah.
But when you understand that God is operating in that time of that's the only thing these people knew.
Yep.
It was not unusual for a king to come in and slay all the males so that
Absolutely.
you know.
I mean,
So
we see Herod does that.
Herod does that looking for Jesus.
Yep.
And so we can't possibly comprehend what is happening in this culture.
Yep.
But it honestly was not that shocking in this day and age.
And again, with part of that is in their culture, family systems and emotions weren't nearly the same.
No, they weren't.
These parents were only attached to their kids, one if they were male, because of what they could do for them.
Right.
And so we're not trying to dumb down the loss.
No.
It
No.
is incredibly awful to hear about this. But again, we're reading this in a 21st mindset where this would never be allowed because
Exactly.
of us living in a new covenant.
And honestly, because of Jesus' influence
Exactly.
of turning the tables in the new covenant, saying, no,
Exactly.
we're not going to operate that way anymore.
Yes.
So God was using the times of the day, the kingdoms of that day,
Yes.
all to set up this new earthly kingdom that he was going to produce.
Absolutely. And so there's, we got about 10 minutes left. So we've got that plague. We have that happening. But
Right.
there's a key detail part of that plague that kind of sets up then the Israelites for the next 400 years. And that's the event of the Passover. It's
Right.
what it's called as the Passover. And so do you want to explain just a little bit of what why it's called the Passover
Yeah.
and what that looks like for celebration?
Yeah, and it all comes back to this, and if you read farther, it even says this is how you're supposed to remember the Passover.
Yes.
The time that I rescued you out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to this, is that they take this perfect non-defect firstborn lamb, and they basically kill it, and they take the blood and put it over their door frame.
Yep.
So that the spirit is coming to kill all these firstborn pass over
Yep.
their households.
Yep.
And so they are all rescued. And it was the final straw that finally Pharaoh said, "I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Just go."
Yeah.
And they loot them on the way out. And so then God sets up this whole festival, if you will, of every year you are to remember this time that I rescued you.
Yep.
And it's just ingrained in these Israelites,
Jewish culture. Yep.
into this culture of how did God rescue us through the blood
Of
the lamb.
And here's what's so powerful. We're going to take this to the next level because this is kind of what sets the stage for Jesus. Okay. I've been reading this book that's an intense gospel reading, and Mark's account of Jesus' passion is intense. Okay. When you think about it, so Jesus, it was on the 14th day. So it was the preparation, I guess, of Passover, which was the day before, of when Jesus took part in, I believe that's when he was either arrested or it was when he, like the Last Supper. It's one of those two. And he was arrested after the Last Supper. So
Right.
same scenario. Okay. Anyway, on the 14th day, like we saw here, is when all of the Jews during Passover on the 14th day would bring their lamb to the temple and to be sacrificed. And I think they were saying it was like, I'm going to butcher this number, but the book was saying it was like 50,000 lambs would be butchered at the temple, and then the blood would just be covering the streets.
Right. It would
Okay?
actually, they had viaducts and things. And they said
Exactly.
the viaducts would be filled with this blood.
Yes. Well, here's what's so significant about this is Jesus was carrying his cross to Golgotha on the day that all of these lambs were being sacrificed. And he was God's lamb.
Right.
He was God saying, hey, years ago, the Passover of the firstborn son, you all had to sacrifice something, whether it was your firstborn lamb or it was the Egyptians losing something. God now declares that he is sending, I'm burping, the firstborn, his first and only son,
Right.
to carry, beat down, bloody, his sacrificing his son for all of humankind.
Right. It just setting up the story of the evidence is so convincing of how God has set this up for hundreds of
Yes.
years
Yes.
for this event to happen.
Yep.
And for these Jewish people who are so ingrained in all the law, all the things that have to happen,
Yep.
the celebration of the Passover, it is so evident to them now, or a lot of them now, that this Jesus must be the Messiah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that's what we want to talk about for our last few minutes of today is after how everything happened with the Exodus, where the Israelites saw God came through. He is taking care of us. And then you also translate that to when David comes into reign in 1 Samuel, I believe, comes into reign and takes care of the Philistines. And you're like, God has got us. They had this expectation of what their Messiah was going to look
Right.
like.
Yes. They thought he was going to be, in essence, a warrior, a king.
Yes.
And it's honestly when Jesus walked into Palm Sunday, when we celebrate that,
Exactly.
is they wanted him to be king.
Yeah, and so when John writes about this Palm Sunday and he's riding in on a donkey, and all of these people are like, yes, he is going into Jerusalem.
And they expected him to
Expected
overthrow
him to
the
overthrow
government.
the Roman government.
Yep.
And instead, Jesus comes in love, and he says, hey, by the way, Israel, you remember years ago when God overthrew Egypt? Well, now we are called to love the Egyptians. Okay, now we are called. And you know what's so fascinating about this whole Jesus story is when Joseph and Mary had Jesus, okay, the birth of Jesus, and they were forced to flee to Egypt. Okay, they were going back, and you know how terrifying that must have been for them
Sure.
as Jew, like terrifying
Right.
for Joseph and his Jewish culture to say, "Whoa, we heard for years about
Of
how awful this was,
And God had to rescue us from that.
and now we're bringing the Messiah back to Egypt," and that just kind of sets the stage for saying, "Hey, this Jesus guy is going to be different than anything we could ever imagine."
Right. And the other, I think, piece of this that's absolutely amazing to us, and we don't understand this, and we've talked about this so many times here at Crossbridge, is they celebrated the Passover. It was one of their biggest festivals. They did it every year after year. It was so crucial to who they were as a nation. And so Jesus in the Last Supper is going to celebrate the Passover.
Yeah.
And what he did there was absolutely unbelievable.
Yep.
His disciples who were in that upper room with him should have all walked out on him for what he did and what he said.
Yeah.
And was basically they are there to celebrate this Passover of God rescuing them, the nation of Israel, out of Egypt. And Jesus says, we're not going to do that anymore, basically. I mean, when you really look at it,
Yeah.
he says, you are basically here to celebrate. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to celebrate me.
Yep.
It was blasphemous.
It was crazy.
What he did.
Yeah.
And honestly, all those guys should have been up there and saying, "You're what?"
Yeah.
There's a pastor we follow that he actually puts it this way: is that it would be like we're coming up on Christmas, where one of us gets up on Christmas and say, "You know what? We're not going to celebrate this Jesus guy anymore. We're going to celebrate me."
Yeah.
At Christmas. So
Yeah.
just forget about the whole Jesus thing. We're celebrating. That's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
He said, "And I am issuing in this new covenant."
Yep.
That's no longer that. All that stuff was pointing to me.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah, and so that's what makes this event so significant, and why we wanted to talk about for the first kid story, where it's not really a kid story at all. You've got this
Not
God of
at all.
plagues, and you're wondering, okay, who is this God? That's why it's so important that you can't just pull either a passage or even a story, the Exodus story, out of context. You have to understand it sets up the entire narrative.
Everything.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. It is a story that intertwines, and when you start seeing all the significance of what God was doing,
Yeah.
and again, we've got the whole picture because we've talked about it, we've seen it, we can read the whole story. They were living this.
Absolutely.
Had no idea what God was trying to accomplish.
Yep. And it's just crazy when you understand that. And, the whole Exodus story, just to kind of conclude it, is God establishing himself as a God of justice and a God of love.
Right.
Even though that's hard to see with the plagues. I mean, he gave the Egyptians and the Israelites 9 chances. And you've got to imagine before that, we have this where God is silent, where the Israelites feel like God is silent.
Right.
But he sends Moses and Aaron, and he sends these people. He's like, hey, you have these chances time after time after time again. And then they escape from captivity. And God, throughout the entire Old Testament, he says, hey, Israel, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance. And then you get to some of the, smaller books like Lamentations, where God's wrath finally comes down on Israel. And you're like, well, man, if I just read Lamentations, it seems like God's wrathful God.
Right.
But you've got hundreds and hundreds of chances.
Exactly.
Where God is establishing himself as a God of justice and a God of love.
Right.
And so we wanted to start off with tonight so you
Just
could be
a
able to
friendly
sleep
little
tonight.
kid
Just
story.
a friendly little kid story. Just to kind of get our hearts in the right place for Christmas
Right.
coming up.
And
Thanksgiving.
just knowing, the backstory of some of this, of what
Absolutely.
is really going on,
And what Jesus is entering into.
and the links of what not only God did but Jesus did to rescue us.
Yes. Hey, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you have any questions about this story or other stories that maybe you grew up believing, but you're like, wait, if God did this, then what else happened in the Old Testament or the New Testament? We'd love for you to reach out to us, either comment, hey, contact me, or send us a message. We'd love to talk to you about this because we don't want you to walk away feeling discouraged. We want you to know that there is truth and love hidden in every verse. This Sunday, I have the privilege of kicking off our new series called Life Lessons from the Minor Prophets.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be walking us through the minor prophet Nahum. It's about 3 pages long. No, 3 chapters. It's about a page and a half long. And then Bruce will be teaching next week, and Brad will be wrapping up the series.
I took a two chapter, the Minor Prophet.
Yeah, Brad's going to be preaching on Haggai.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so you'll be joining us. I hope you'll be joining us. If you do join us, 9 o'clock or 10:30 on Sunday morning. If you're not able to get the kids around, or it's a long day at work or a long week at work, and you want to stay home, just catch us on our live stream at 10:30.
You don't want to stay home.
Nah, you don't want to. It's going to be
We're much better live.
powerful. Well, I'm much more attractive live. I feel like the camera doesn't get my good angle.
We ought to probably just go sign off.
We should probably sign off. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you
Thanks,
next week.
everybody.